Hi, this is Darwin from Night Cricket.
She's writing words of wisdom, Amanda, for America and the world, Amanda.
And you're listening to the New Wave Music Podcast.
Welcome back to the New Wave Music Podcast. As always, this is Steve.
Hey, and I am T-Bone. Before we begin, though, we'd like to welcome a new sponsor, Offside Apparel. We needed custom shirts for the Oingo Boingo former members concert, and I found Offside Apparel, and was I glad that I did, Steve. Great prices and service.
You can design online or upload your own designs on their website at offsideapparel.com. Perfect solution for family reunions, schools, clubs, companies, you name it. If you need custom printed or embroidered apparel, check out Offside Apparel. Plus, they ship everywhere.
And if you use the code NEWWAVE at checkout, all one word, New Wave, you'll get 10% off your entire order through the end of 2023. Once again, that's offsideapparel.com. Hey, we want to thank our listeners in Hamburg, Germany. We really appreciate you guys listening to us over there.
All right, well, kicking off this episode, we're going to jump into the brand new album from Duran Duran. They have a brand new album that just dropped a few weeks ago. And if you need a refresher on Duran Duran, you're no doubt going to remember their hits such as Hungry Like the Wolf.
I'm on the hunt, I'm after you. Mouth is alive, juice is like wine, and I'm hungry like the wolf.
Rio.
Her name is Rio, and she dances on the sand. Just like that river twisting through a dusty lane. And when she shines, she really shows you all she can.
And Come Undone.
Stay wilder than the wind and blow me into clouds. Who do you need? Who do you love when you come undone?
The album is Danse Macabre. It's their 16th studio album. It was released at the end of October in 2023. That was recorded with 3 new tracks, covers, and reimagined versions of older Duran Duran material. And this one does feature former guitarist Andy Taylor and Warren Cucurullo, making their first appearance since 2004's Astronaut and 2000's Pop Trash. And does feature Duran Duran staple Nile Rodgers and Victoria DeAngelis as guest artists.
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve, because back in 1993, Duran Duran had what was called the Wedding Album. And for this, it's 2023, 30 years later, you're right, we have what they're calling the Halloween Album. And this is, as you mentioned, their 16th studio album, and it follows that great Future Past, which was released in 2021.
Yeah, and I was actually kind of really leery about this when I heard it was a straight covers album. I was glad to see that it's not just a straight covers
Right.
album because, let's face it, Duran Duran's last cover album, Thank You,
Yeah,
wasn't the best. It had White Lines, which was great.
right.
It's become a great live staple, but the rest of that album has been pretty much forgettable.
Yeah, and it was pretty much critically drummed at the same time.
But as you said, this is kind of more of a concept album, and the inspiration came from a Halloween show that the band played back in Vegas last year on October 31st, 2022. As a result, singer Simon Le Bon stated that the album is going to be about a crazy Halloween party, and it's supposed to be fun. Keyboardist Nick Rhodes revealed that the project came about through a pure organic process and was made faster than anything else that the band has done since their debut album. He also explained that as a result, it's something that they could not predict, citing the band's core elements: emotion, mood, style, and attitude. As the essence of the album, it was summarized as the soundtrack to their ultimate Halloween party. Founding member and bass player John Taylor added that the album offers an interesting insight to the personality of the band with music that really packs a punch.
All right, well, so let's jump in on the first track, Night Boat.
Am I alone or is the river alive? 'Cause it echoes me, echoes me, echoes me. I'm waiting for the night boat. I'm waiting for the night boat.
So this album opens with a revisit of the band's early song, but other than the lyrics, you may not really recognize it. And I mean that in a good way. This version starts this Halloween-themed album far gloomier, along with some ominous chimes that fit in perfectly. Plus, Nick's synths really capture that dark feeling, making this track stand apart from the original version. And as you mentioned, Steve, and I'm going to kind of comment on this as we go, this track does have Andy Taylor on guitars.
Kicking off this album, we get the first of one of 3 Duran Duran remakes, or maybe a better word would be reimagineering of a Duran Duran song. This version, I feel, was a great remake and improves the pacing and mix of the original. The original was maybe a little bit more synth-focused. This one feels a lot more polished. Simon's vocal delivery was a huge improvement over the original, and to me, this is a great way to open up a Halloween theme album.
And that'll take us up to the second track and one of my favorites, Black Moonlight.
Hold tight, we're going out tonight, under the black moonlight, dance till we're out of sight, into the black moonlight, alive in the dead of night, under the black moonlight.
The first of a few new songs is a just dark enough quick dance track. Though I wasn't entirely convinced by LeBon's vocals on the first track, I think he sounds fantastic here. Nile Rodgers of Chic makes an appearance on this song, and it's pretty obvious. A sound that is relatively familiar and sounds great with his quick pace on this song. And this is what I really like, Steve.
Yeah, T-Bone, the second track is what you've come to expect from the current iteration of the Duran Duran. The Nile Rodgers influence is front and center on this track, with some driving guitar riffs and outstanding percussions. Simon and the rest of the band are also on point, and I do agree with you. Simon's vocals are a lot better on this track. The first one was good. This one is really good. And this is another track that I really found myself enjoying and continue to revisit long after I've listened to the album. And that's going to take us to track number 3, Love Voodoo.
Night after night, I try to prove that I can resist you. Tied up inside your love voodoo, designed to manipulate.
And this is the second of the 3 Duran Duran remakes that we're getting on the album. The original, of course, came off 1993's The Wedding album, and it had more of an R&B tempo to it. I like how this one maybe has just a little bit more jazz tempo, in my opinion. Simon's vocal delivery was on point, but the bass work from John Taylor is the highlight on this track. This reimagine or remake, like Nightboat, was a huge improvement over the original Duran Duran recording.
Yeah, this track really starts off with a fantastic groove and almost disco guitars and bass. Ghoulish synths lie underneath, and they make a very complete sound. But it's when the chorus comes in, that one that brings the pace up, that the song really takes off. LeBon continues to shine with strong vocals and is matched by some equally good backing singers.
Let's jump into track number 4, Bury a Friend.
What do you want from me? Why don't you run from me? What are you wondering? What do you know? Why aren't you scared of me? Why do you care for me? When we all fall asleep, where do we go? Keep you in the dark. What had you expected? Me to make you my art and make you a star and get you connected. I'll meet you in the park.
When this track first kicked off, I thought we were getting a recording of maybe the Twin Peaks theme. But then Simon's vocals kick in and the track takes off. T-Bone, to much of your disappointment, I'm sure, I'm not familiar with the works of Billie Eilish. I can't tell you how the original sounds, but this version of the song that the band delivers is yet another song that will come October, will be on lots of Halloween playlists. So far, I'm really enjoying the album.
Well, you make fun of me if you want, Steve, but yeah, I don't know the original version of this song. But as visited by Duran Duran, I like what I heard. The song is far more minimal for the first third of the track, but then it significantly picks up in pace. Clearly, the title alone, Bury a Friend, fits perfectly with the overall theme of the album. But what the band has done has given the song a haunting kind of feeling that, like I say, works perfectly with this kind of album. And that'll take us up to the fifth track, yet another one of my favorites on this album, Supernature.
But the potions that we made touch the creatures down below, and they grew up in a way that we've never seen before. Supernature, supernature.
Now, this one was recorded originally by Marc Cerrone. I hope I'm not butchering his name, but he's a well-known French songwriter and arranger who was very active during the disco era. And it's no surprise that this cover is dripping in the sounds of the late 70s disco scene. This one also features Nile Rodgers again, which not only makes sense, but gives the song some real life. Roger Taylor's beat is steady, just as you would expect from this dance style, and it really works well.
Yeah, another cover in it. It's another one that I'm not familiar with the original material, but this version I love that driving percussions that lead into the synths and just pick up that tempo throughout the song. This was another one, like you mentioned, that Nile Rodgers is clearly front and center on, and it makes a lot of sense with it being in the disco vibe. It felt like he had his influence really throughout this song, especially towards the end with that change in guitar riff. And it's a good track and one that I recommend checking out.
And that'll take us to the sixth track, Danse Macabre, the title track.
No way, some ghost jamming on AC Cobra, Auto da Fe, get dirty up on the Danse Macabre. Hey, no way, I had you down for the cat's pajamas, Auto da Fe, get dirty up on the Danse Macabre. If you don't mind, if you don't mind, if you don't mind.
Now, this original track opens with a drum beat that, along with some grungy guitars, are the highlight of this one. The lyrics and vocals outside of the chorus leave a little bit to be desired, though. Laban comes across as another singer that I just can't place. I don't know who I'm thinking of, Steve, but he sounds like somebody else, and it's not something that I really think works all that well. Still, even with the less interesting parts, this is still a pretty good track to go with this album.
And see, T-Bone, here's where we're going to probably differ just a little bit. To me, it's no wonder that this was the lead single off the album. It's definitely the album highlight. I love how Simon's vocals are mixed from almost spoken word, and then he goes into a different vocal delivery for the chorus. This is a song that I feel the entire band gets to shine and shows that the band has no signs of slowing down. And as I've said before on some of these other songs, this one here is going to probably be a staple come next October.
Yeah, I think you like this one a little bit more than me. Don't get me wrong. I like this one quite a bit. But yeah, I think you probably did like it more. And that'll take us up to the seventh track, Secret October 31st. So this is yet another one of the remake songs that Duran Duran has done before. They slow things down quite a bit here. There's a great bass line that reminds me of a heartbeat through the song. As the chorus comes in, the pace picks up a bit, but then returns to that slower tempo. What I do love is how they create the sound of a child's music box also to open and close the song. It's an interesting small element, like what you would see to make this song very unique.
Yeah, T-Bone, you're right. This is a remake of 1983's Secret October. And this one, like you just said, you're almost reading my notes. I do love how this opens up with that wind-up jewelry box intro. It does a great job to kind of set the mood and the tempo. This one, like the prior Duran Duran remakes, the tempo has been improved, as has the musicianship. It's a lot more tighter. I like that they went back and revisited this one. Simon's vocal delivery of the lyrics is on point. This is a ballad that definitely does not feel out of place on this album. Well, let's see how we feel about track number 8, Ghost Town.
This town is coming like a ghost town. I must see you fight against themselves. This place is coming like a ghost town. People getting angry.
This one's a tricky one for me, as no one can top the original version of Ghost Town by the Specials. Duran Duran, I'm glad, does try to make this version unique and their own. I'm glad we did not get a note-for-note remake. And like how Duran Duran did the cover of White Lines on their previous cover album, Thank You, and that version of White Lines is the highlight to see them play live. This is one I'd love to see Duran Duran incorporate into their live shows. It's full of energy, and it makes it unique and their own on a very familiar song.
Well, I think maybe you're copying my notes this time, Steve. Yeah, this cover, I think, was done exceptionally well. There's a great familiarity with the song, and Duran Duran doesn't veer too much from the original, while at the same time making it just slightly different enough to become their own version. I especially like the backing vocals, particularly when they produce a bit of a howl. It's very effective.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And as we've stated before, covers can be tricky because you're either going to get a karaoke version, something completely out of left field, or something that's just a mere copy, or in cases like this, where the band takes it their own and runs with it.
Where it works, absolutely. So that'll take us up to another cover, the 9th track, Paint It Black.
Maybe then I'll fade away, not face the facts. It's not easy facing up when your whole world is black. No more will my deep sea shade a deeper blue. Maybe now this dark thing will start happening to you.
Now, this one is originally, of course, from Rolling Stones. It has Andy on the guitars. The previous track, Ghost Town, was so close to the original, and that is nearly the opposite with this cover. The band does give the song a more ominous feel. Both the bass and synths really shine, and the guitar work is evident throughout the song. Laban kicks off his vocals into high gear as he takes them to a sort of growl and then matches the gothic style.
Yeah, T-Bone, I agree with you 100% on this. This version, Duran Duran takes the classic Rolling Stones tracks and makes it their own. I love how they redid the synth work throughout the song, and the bass lines by Taylor was just on point. Simon's vocals, I thought he did a good job of matching the style of the song while not imitating Mick Jagger and making this another song that I'd like to revisit again.
Well, that'll take us up to the 10th track, Super Lonely Freak.
Because you're lonely in your nightmare, let me in. Because there's heat beneath your winter, let me in. And it's silent on your stone field, let me in.
Now, if the title of this track seems obvious, well, it is, but the song itself doesn't start that way. We begin with a fairly straightforward remake of their own song, Lonely in Your Nightmare, only to find midway in it completely changes into Super Freak from Rick James. Overall, does it fully work? Not really, but it's still a nice sort of experiment and still really fun to hear.
Yeah, T-Bone, you're right. We get the stylistic merge of the band's own Lonely in Your Nightmare from 1982 and Super Freak by Rick James. It's one that I feel maybe works a little bit more after seeing Duran Duran live, especially with Nile Rodgers opening for him. I can definitely see how this song maybe came into play or came onto this album. And I'm glad Duran Duran lets Nile Rodgers shine just a little bit on his cover with Super Freak that ends out the song, because that's clearly probably the highlight of this song.
Girl is pretty wild now. The kind of girl you read about. That girl is pretty kinky. I really love to taste her. She's alright. The girl's alright with me.
It's a nice merger of both songs, but really, let's be honest, when it ends with Super Freak, that's really the high point of the song, and that's really what most of our listeners are going to probably appreciate. And with how much Nile Rodgers has been influenced in Duran Duran lately and on this album, they really should just make him an honorary member of the band at this point.
Well, they really should, yeah. I mean, his work just fits in perfectly generally with their overall tone. So, yeah, that would definitely make sense.
All right, T-Bone, I'm really curious what we think about track number 11, Spellbound. Okay, just a disclaimer. I'm a huge Susie and the Banshees fan, and I really tried so hard to have an open mind on this cover of this classic Susie song. And I'm happy to say Duran Duran did not disappoint on their take of this song. I love how they captured the frenzy of the original, and Simon's vocal delivery works perfectly for me on this one. This is one of the best covers I've heard of Spellbound, but surprisingly, there's another cover I've heard of Spellbound recently that I also really enjoyed, and we'll get to that a little bit later.
Steve, once again, you're reading my notes. Yeah, Spellbound is definitely one of my favorite Susie and the Banshees songs, and I was very excited and interested in seeing what Duran Duran would do with this classic, and it did not disappoint. Andy's guitars and the driving drum beat are just the beginning. Laban's vocals match effectively, and Nick produces some excellent synths to equal the gothic underpinnings of the track. All I could think was, well done. And that'll take us up to the 12th track, Psycho Killer. Now, clearly, this is the Talking Heads song that they have remade, and it also features Victoria De Angelis. She is an Italian musician and songwriter and a member of the band Manskin. The bass work by John, which opens this track, really took me by surprise. The guitars are really good, but it's that bass work that pulled me into it. The song, for the most part, is a fairly accurate recreation of the original. Laban gives it some breathy vocals, which works for this album that it's trying to produce. And the backing vocals during the chorus only add to the effect.
Like the prior song, T-Bone, Duran Duran's walking a very fine line here, covering a classic song from an iconic band. And their take of Talking Heads' classic was one I feel, again, did not disappoint. Simon and company did enough to make the song a bit of their own without trying to mirror the original. I really liked the backing vocals that they added, and I enjoyed the tempo changes that this one had compared to the original. And the vocal mix throughout the track, I really enjoyed. If you're a fan of Duran Duran and of Talking Heads, I think you're really going to enjoy their take on this song.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And that'll take us up to the final track, the 13th, and which is funny enough, being a Halloween album, we have 13 tracks. Confessions in the Afterlife. This is a new song, and I was a little disappointed to get a very slow ballad that does have some nice instrumentation. But after many quality tracks, this one seems to be kind of a dull production. The vocals are very smooth, and there is a fair amount of atmosphere, but I'm sure that's not enough really to finish this album correctly.
Here to close out the album, we do get an original Duran Duran song that was recorded specifically for the album. And like you said, this one did kind of really feel out of place. It's not a bad song. It's just the placement of the song was not one I'd pick to close the album, especially after those high-intensity last couple songs. Maybe in the middle of the album, this one would be a lot better. But this is a track that you do need to hear with headphones to pick up all the musical cues that come into this track. This ballad we get has a great vocal delivery and outstanding musicianship from the band. And it might not be the best way to close out the album, but I still enjoyed the song. Maybe in my own playlist, I might reposition it differently.
Yeah.
But it's still one I recommend worth checking out.
No, absolutely. I agree with you on that. It's not maybe the best way to close things off. It still is a well-made song, though. So, yeah, Steve, I went into this not so much leery, but I wasn't really sure how this was going to work out as a Halloween-themed album. And I found that not only is the instrumentation very good, the production very good, the vocals very good, but Steve, this is just a fun album. I mean, there's really not a whole lot more you could ask for Duran Duran. They're not one of those bands that deals with serious political issues generally. This is just a fun album to listen to. So for me, it is a high recommendation, even despite maybe a few small minor quibbles.
When I first heard Duran Duran was doing a cover album, I was very nervous. I was not the biggest fan of the album, thank you. Yeah, it gave us a great version of Grandmaster Flash's White Lines, but the rest of that album was just a train wreck. This album, however, I'm happy to say, is a great, enjoyable, fun album from Duran Duran. And you hit the nail on the head when you said fun. It is a great, fun, easy listen album. My only complaint on this album is they waited until the last weekend of October to release it. This is an album that you're going to want to listen to, not even in October to fully enjoy, But come next October, this is going to get high plays, I hope.
Yeah,
it's
I
a
would think
great,
so.
like they said, they wanted to make a fun Halloween party album, and they did exactly just that. It's a highly recommended check out this album. All right, T-Bone. Well, with that, let's jump into some music news to break up this album review episode.
Yeah, so let's start off with the Lightning Seeds. Now, they've announced a tour for November through December of 2024, quite a ways off. Unfortunately, just in the UK. This will be a 35th year Greatest Hits tour, and they will also release a Greatest Hits compilation in October called Tomorrow's Here Today. That is October 4th, 2024. And Steve, how much we loved their latest album. It's just a shame that we're not going to see them in here in the U.S.
Well, T-Bone, unfortunately, we do have a little bit of somber news to pass on to our listeners. Lars Williams of the Psychedelic Furs did pass away during the time of this recording. In 1980, Lars Williams joined the Waitresses, contributing to their big hit, Christmas Wrapping. From there, when the Waitresses broke up in 83, he was swiftly hired by the Psychedelic Furs and went on tour before formally joining the band. He appeared on the albums Mirror Moves in 84, Midnight to Midnight in 87. Though he left the Psychedelic Furs in 89, he rejoined in 2005, going to record, and he also went on to record saxophone for their 2020 comeback album, Made of Rain. And Lars Williams was undergoing cancer treatments. It wasn't going well. The treatments weren't helping. He decided instead of just kind of going back through treatment, he wanted to get back to what he enjoyed until his final days, and that's exactly what he did. And Mars's final performance together with the Furs was just a few days ago at the Darker Waves Music Fest, where he passed away 2 days after that festival.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in just a moment here. But, you know, I don't know how many times, Steve, that we've seen the Psychedelic Furs, and he's always been such an energetic performer on saxophone.
Oh, absolutely.
Fitting in perfectly with the band. So it really is an unfortunate loss.
Yeah, such a bad loss for them.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, so that brings up Darker Waves. So Steve and I flew down to sunny Southern California last weekend, and we went to the Darker Waves Festival. I'll be honest, Steve, it's probably my last festival. I am a little too old for this anymore. I'll go to individual shows. But if I'm going to go out on a festival, it was a pretty darn good one.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I think the first full band that we actually saw was Twin Tribes.
A newer band.
Did not know anything about Twin Tribes, and man, that they put on a great show. Made me an instant fan. One I'm really thinking we maybe want to dive into maybe early next year and see if we can get them on for a new artist spotlight and introduce our crowd to them.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun. Just two guys up on stage, guitars, synth drum beats. And yeah, they put on a pretty darn good show.
And shortly after them, another new band that I was not familiar with at all was Blossoms. And probably like most of our listeners, they were probably hoping to see Rick Astley show up and do some Smiths covers. And I'm actually really glad he didn't, because Blossoms blew me away. They are a fantastic band, one that I want to seek out and see more of than just a 30-minute set.
No, I completely agree with you. Yeah, the lead singer is just so talented, very androgynous, and he just had so many great moves up on stage. I was telling you, Steve, that the band kind of reminded me of a late 70s kind of pop rock band with their slacks and their button-up shirts and their 70s looking beards and hair. And yeah, I thought they were just fantastic to listen to and to watch on stage.
Yeah, and then probably, at least for me, the highlight of the Darker Waves Fest was no doubt OMD.
Oh, no question.
They knew how to capture a crowd. I loved how Andy came out and just said, "We don't have time for art. We're just going to do 10 singles and blow your mind." And they did just that.
Well, yeah, and they had the crowd in their hands.
Oh, they stole that show. It was fantastic.
Absolutely.
We had the privilege of being pretty close up for them during that set, and you could just see the joy in their face, the surprise of the crowd. Which is something I didn't really even realize, being that close to the stage, how many people were there to watch OMD's set.
Oh, my word.
But man, that was a performance, and I'm really looking forward to their tour next year.
Yeah, you could obviously tell the fun and excitement in the crowd, but you could see the same thing on the faces of OMD. They had a great time.
And then after them was the Violent Femmes, had the task of trying to follow up OMD, and I felt they did okay. They did their self-titled debut album in its entirety, so they opened up with Blister in the Sun. But I felt about halfway through, they kind of started losing that crowd. That might have not been the best album to play for a festival. Who's maybe not familiar with some of the deep cuts of the Femmes.
Yeah, I think I liked it a little bit more than you did, just because they did seem to have a little bit more energy on stage than I remember them having over the past couple of times that we've seen them. Those past times weren't bad, but I felt they had a little more energy on this one. And yeah, forget the crowd. I was just thrilled to see them do that first album in its entirety. And the favorite part of that was how they talked about, that's the end of the first side.
Oh,
now
yeah.
Let's turn it over to the second
now
side.
We're going to flip over the album. This is where you flip over the LP. That was a nice.
That was really hilarious.
And then another band that I finally got to cross off my bucket list was Devo. And this was probably, I believe this was their last performance or one of the last performances.
Well, I believe it's their last one. Yeah.
And they did not disappoint.
No.
They surprisingly did 3 outfit changes in that set. I was actually really surprised to hear some of their songs. Not really surprised to see their set list, but one that caught me off guard was the song Peekaboo.
Yeah.
I'm really happy I got to hear that one live.
Well, yeah, and I saw them down at Cruel World 2 years before, or a year and a half before, and I think I actually liked that Cruel World performance just a little bit more. But you're right, this one was still fantastic. One thing that I really appreciated, and they did the same thing at Cruel World, is how they started off more with their synth-oriented songs, and then they made a change midway through and went into their guitar-oriented songs. It really shows off how much talent the band has. They probably weren't given a whole lot of credit over the years. Just known for a few singles, but they really were a very talented band.
And just kind of as a side note, one band that we kind of heard and saw from a distance while we were taking a break was She Wants Revenge. I alluded to it earlier about the cover of Spellbound, but when they jumped into one saying they're doing a tribute to the Queen, they did Susie's Spellbound. They did it justice. It sounded great.
Yeah, and I wish we had been right there at that stage, because I thought overall, and I'm a fan of She Wants Revenge, and I thought they sounded great. So we missed out on that one, unfortunately, but you have to sit down at some point.
And while we did that, we made our way to the smaller stage, which was a shame. This band deserved to be on a big stage, was the Human League. They were another highlight of the festival. They performance killed it. They knew how to capture the crowd. That crowd was engaged. My only complaint was, why were they on the small stage and not one of the bigger stages? No question. Yeah, they really should have been on a larger one. When they went into my favorite song of theirs, The Lebanon, I was hooked. We had to leave that one a little bit early to get onto our next stage, which I was really looking forward to, but I wish I could have seen the whole thing. And the next group that we saw was the legendary New Order. And Steve, let me tell you, we were way back on that one. We were not close to stage at all, but the effect was still there. They sounded fantastic. I had not seen them in probably decades. And while Bernard Summer has definitely grown older, haven't we all? The band still did a fantastic job on some of the greatest hits that they've ever had. Oh, yeah, no doubt. Bernard knew how to capture that crowd. Yeah, he might move a little slower, like probably most of the crowd, but they had that whole crowd engaged. I'm happy to see them. They were one of my other bucket lists I haven't seen, and I'm glad we stuck around. And closing off the evening, I really wanted to see Tears for Fears. They were on the other stage. About a mile away. Yeah, at the other end of the beach, about a mile away. After standing in the festival for 12 plus hours, I was a little tired. But I'm glad the festival did beam it to that stage. They showed the performances on the big screen, so we were able to watch Tears for Fears there, sitting down. And they sounded great. Some of the festival goers were kind of shocked that they played 5 songs off their new album, The Tipping Point. And for me, I'm really glad I got to hear those live. It's a fantastic album. It might not be one that the whole crowd knew, but it's one that they should know. Yeah, absolutely. And it was a little disappointing not to actually be there at that stage. Watching them on the broadcast to the other stage still worked. And no, I agree with you completely. It's a shame that maybe a lot of the crowd didn't really know that new material as well. I mean, obviously they were looking for the hits, which they got also. And so it was still a success. Yeah. And so if Darker Waves does resurface next year, which I can't imagine it won't, it's one depending on the lineup. It sounds like I think I'll be there. T-Bone may not be, but it's one I'll make the trek back for. Steve, you could always change my mind. That's a strong possibility. I just need to make sure that I rest for about a week before I go. All right, enough for the music news. Let's go ahead and start our next reviews. This one's going to be for a couple of Ocean Blue EPs. Now, you'll remember them for their songs Between Something and Nothing.
Of what this man has done in a painting on a canvas.
Drifting, Falling.
Drifting, falling on your own again. The walls of cold and gray surround this around. Drifting, falling, watching all your dreams roll by.
And one of my favorites, Ballerina, Out of Control.
She twists and she whirls, dancing in all ways.
So we have two EPs that were released this year in 2023. The first one is called Ayn, A-Y-N, and the second one is called Denmark. We'll get to that one in just a moment. This one, of course, has David Schetzel on vocals and guitars, Bobby Mitten on bass, Ode Rohn on guitars and keyboards, and Peter Anderson on drums. And if you, of course, listen to our second episode, you will, of course, know Steve and I love our Ocean Blue.
Yeah, so really any excuse to review the Ocean Blue, I'm going to take it. That's why we saw these two EPs. They had 2 songs off a prior album, but 6 new or B-sides, so it's newish music from the Ocean Blue. So we're going to jump into it. I think our audience will like that. Or let's jump into the first EP, Anne, and it opens up with the self-titled track, Anne.
Whispering words from within, whispering the silver and the gold of what I want to hear about. This is what it means, this is what it means for you.
This track opens with some outstanding acoustic guitar work that will become a staple of the Ocean Blue. David's vocals are on point, along with the rest of the band delivering some outstanding musicianship. This is one song that I feel is a great Ocean Blue highlight, and one to easily fans of the band are going to really love and enjoy revisiting, and new fans of the band, this may pull you into being an Ocean Blue fan.
Yeah, you mentioned that acoustic guitar. It is just beautiful. Then we have the drums and the traditional Ocean Blue electric guitars that start this track. But Steve, I really love the bass line that fits in perfectly well with all the other instruments. If by some slim chance you're unfamiliar with the Ocean Blue, then this is a perfect song from their catalog to start with.
Track number 2 on this EP, Garden Song.
Do you see in the sky? Do you ever stop to wonder why? Can you sing to yourself with an audience of no one else? It's over now. What's done is done. Don't look at me if you're not number one.
Some deep percussions open this one, and that quickly fade into that staple guitar sound of the band. This one, yes, the lyrics at times can maybe be a little bit simple, but I love how David delivers them, and they made them work for me. Even his simple vocal delivery of the bop, bop, bop that blends into a nice guitar solo was a highlight. My only complaint on this song was just how it ended. That background noise went on just a little too long just kind of started to overstay its welcome.
Yeah, Steve, I'm going to correct you just a little bit. This one is called Garden Song, Dawn at New Hope, Pennsylvania. So it's a little bit longer. Now, you had just said there's only 2 new songs on this album, and the first track, and then Denmark on the second EP. But I am pretty sure this is an extended version of the Garden Song from Davy Jones' Locker.
I think you might be right, actually. Maybe that's why it sounded so familiar.
I noticed, I looked it up, and it's about a minute longer. And so I think it's basically kind of a remake, but an extended version of it. This one has fantastic instrumentation, as is always the case. And I really loved the lively keyboard line. This is one of those tracks that I've always liked David's vocals. He seems to have just a great time with the changes within the song. And that'll take us up to the third track, a B-side from Davy Jones' Locker called Harlequin.
You disregard your past, basket into the last page, while all your troubles are piling up. I'm upset, but that's okay. It's feeling more romantic that way. The romance to me has lost its charm.
Now, I believe it's Ode taking the vocal reins on this track. It's a little jarring hearing David on the other songs and then find vocal duties taken over by someone else. But fortunately, the instrumentation makes up for it, maybe not sounding quite right. We're just so used to David. The guitars and bass really complement each other, while the drumming seems a bit muted in the background.
Yeah, simple guitars kick off this track. And you're right, we do have Ode on vocals. I'm really glad that they did include this song with Ode doing vocals, as if you've been a fan of the band, you're always going to know Ode does a vocal track pretty much on each album. And I think even in concert, he does one song where he takes over vocals. This one's a nice listen, but I'll say if you're not a big fan of the Ocean Blue, you're going to want to probably skip this song. This song features some great musicianships, but it is the weak song on the EP. And maybe it's not going to pull in any new fans of the band.
And so the final track on this EP, another B-side, is the fourth, New Man from Chicago.
Summer sliding into favor. Winter, he's my friend. Ba, 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 da, da, bum. Ba, 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 da, da, bum.
So playful guitars open this track, but at the same time, it's a little repetitive. Fortunately, as the lead guitar comes in, that changes. Even with that, though, I didn't find this track to be one of the best on the EP. It has everything you'd expect from the band, so even any criticism can generally be forgiven. David's guitar playing, always so good, is probably the thing that stands out for me most on this track.
This track's another one that captures that iconic sound of the band, from David's vocal delivery to the tight musicianship you get from the rest of the lads. It's a nice experience to go back in time and hear some of these earlier works from the Ocean Blue. You're going to notice a bit of the lyrics might maybe seem to be missing, but I like how you get David doing the bop bop throughout. That makes this track work.
All right, so that'll take us up to the second EP we're going to discuss, called Denmark, also released in 2023. And the first track on that is Denmark.
Stop and blink, just what would she think in the meantime? Does it matter much? Denmark came and Denmark marked my soul. Denmark came and Denmark marked my.
So this is another from the Davy Jones Locker album. It opens with a type of guitar work from David that we've come to expect. Acoustic guitar fits right in with the electric. The drumming isn't particularly interesting, but it doesn't hurt the song in any sort of significant way. I particularly like the background vocals later in the track that fill in the overall sound of this song.
And see, T-Bone, this is where we differ just slightly. I love the percussions that kick off this track that blend into that iconic guitar sound that, to me, defines the Ocean Blue. This is a very solid song from the band. It's a song that I would throw on a playlist or recommend to anybody that likes the sound of the Ocean Blue or wants to hear more of the Ocean Blue.
All right, so the second track, another B-side, is Sweetheart, You're Surrounded.
Sweetheart, can't you see? I'd sooner take my life than see you leave. And be surrounded by those who agree. And have you take me up on it tonight? Like it was.
David's vocals have a more subdued sound with this track. He sounds just different enough on this song to give it really kind of a unique sound. The warbly guitars used in conjunction with the familiar Ocean Blue guitars is a nice addition, and Bobby's bass mixed in with those guitars is just evident enough to create a nice effect.
T-Bone, this is a track that the musicianship is the highlight on this song. Again, on this EP, I think from what I had on my notes, the vocals changed a little bit enough. I thought Ode was doing the vocals.
Yeah.
And you can tell he might not be up to David's vocal delivery, but it still made for a very enjoyable listening experience.
Do you think Ode was on this one also?
To me, it sounded like it. It sounded, the vocals just sounded different
Just
enough
different
out of
enough.
the 4 songs. Maybe this is the other staple Ode track on this album. or
Very
EP.
possible. Very possible.
Move on to the third song, Walk Away.
You fight your problems by making problems, then you just walk away. You fight your problems by making problems, then you just walk away. I'm on the outside looking in, I'm your next of kin.
This one took me a bit to really get into. The simple guitar work and percussions mixed with David's vocals were okay. This is one that, yes, you can tell was a B-side, and probably only fans of the band are going to be pulled into this song. I like the switch from acoustic to electric guitars that came in a few minutes into the song. As a fan of the band, it's a song I found to be okay. It might not be up to the level of what we've come to expect of the band and their history, but you can you can definitely tell it's a B-side. Worth checking out if you're a fan of the band. If you're not, if you're a casual fan of the Ocean Blue, probably skip this song.
You know, instrumentally, I found this track to be initially a nice change of pace from other Ocean Blue songs. David's vocals, though, bring us right into what we're so used to. Though Bobby on bass has always been an essential part of this band's sound, he really shines here. It's not completely up front, but the bass line is an integral part of the track. I think I might have liked this one just a little bit more than you. Not one of my favorites on the EP, but still pretty good.
Well, let's close out the EP with the fourth track, Mood Swing.
Stay as you are. Don't stray very far. Remember that it needs you to stay. So don't ever change.
Musically, this is a different tempo than what you would expect from the Ocean Blue. I found it to be a song that took me a few minutes to get into, but I liked the musical journey that it took me on. Again, like probably most of the songs on this EP, it was made for fans of the band, not to pull in new fans.
Yeah, this track does begin a little bit slower than most of the other songs on either EP. The drumming is very leisurely, as are the guitars, but together I thought they worked wonderfully. The tempo stays at that crawling pace, despite some more energetic guitars coming in midway through. Still, I found this to be a rather beautiful, contemplative track for the band.
Overall, when I found out the Ocean Blue was releasing a couple new EPs, of mostly B-sides, I was really looking forward to hearing those. Now, these EPs, I do feel have enough for both casual and hardcore fans of the bands to recommend. If you're new to the Ocean Blue and you've enjoyed what you've heard, hopefully you're going to go back and check out their full catalog from the band, as they just keep getting better with age. And their last album was phenomenal. I'm happy to hear that the Ocean Blue, rumor is going back to record a whole new album. Fingers crossed, we can only hope. These EPs, I have found it to be a good look back at the talent of the band to kind of see where they've started and what they have developed to.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, everybody knows how much of an Ocean Blue fan I am. I would probably say, though, that Davy Jones' Locker is not one of my favorite albums of theirs. It's good, but in many ways, it's a little lackluster compared to many of their other albums. So to revisit songs from that album plus B-sides seemed to be an unusual choice. But, and I agree with you, Steve, for the most part, these EPs still work. They present that mid-era time of the band nicely. These two EPs are worth checking out, especially if you're a real fan of the band. I recommend them, but if you're not familiar with the Ocean Blue, then maybe stick with some of their more highly regarded works.
All right, T-Bone, well, looking ahead to our next episode, we're going to keep that concept album going with new ones from Joe Jackson and Madness. They both released new material, and they're both based on a concept.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I've listened to a little bit of that Madness album. It's extremely unique. So we'll see what we think about those in their entirety.
And as we're getting close at the time of this recording to wrap things up for the end of the year, we're also putting together our best of the year lists. We'd love to hear our listeners. We'll include those in our last show of 2023. If you want to email us your top albums of the year, you can do so at newwavemusicpodcast@yahoo.com.
And of course, you can find us on social media, including Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.